open that bottle of wine. Grab your favorite glass, pour a couple of fingers of scotch in it. Get that stick, light it, and blow. It's time to hang with Steel Sharpened Steel after dark.
Tonight's show is being brought to you by the Pussy Hat. Remember back in 2017 where a bunch of women went to the Capitol to protest what they thought would be a terrible decision by the United States to allow the inauguration of the then President-elect Trump, and they were all up in arms? Well, it seems as if this group of women has collectively fucked around and found out. And so now we are here finding ourselves again needing a pussy hat. You should get yours now because very soon it might be the only pussy that is not under government control. And so while you're out here wearing and donning your beautiful knit vagina, remember to tell your friends to vote for people who won't put them in this position. Warning, pussy hat only available in one color. Good evening, Sharpies. We are the terrible trio tonight. I am Joyce Stevens.
I am Chuck Hobbs.
And I am Sharon Letman Hicks.
And we are here tonight to regale you of the things that we want to talk about. We have a short show, but it is going to be a good show. And so I hope you are buckled in. And you know what? I just want to give another shout out to Anthony Turner. It's almost like Anthony be backstage with us. Because we start seeing like we're still setting up and we see good evening family, like, yo, number one, on time, all the time. God appreciate you. Shout out to Ursula. Glad to have you all here. And we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, okay. Yes, hair. Sharon is giving us the
I'm channeling the 80s, y'all.
Yeah.
I love it. Giving Farrah Fawcett realness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real, y'all.
And it's right.
All
you.
Yo.
I made a joke at the top about the pussy hats, but that is one of the things we're gonna talk about because like our title says, the SCOTUS is on one right now, and there still remains to be seen if anything might change where they may not follow what the leaked ruling says is going to happen, but that's looking real dicey right now. So, I mean, as things stand, we may be seeing the overturning of something that 2 generations of women just assumed would never happen because everyone kept saying it's the law of the land. It's the law of the land. Roe v. Wade, that's the law of the land. We heard all of the most recent additions to the Supreme Court say we recognize this as the law of the land. What they're not telling you is it was never a law. It was a ruling. And rulings can be changed. The same way Plessy versus Ferguson was a ruling that was overturned. The same way, anything else that is a ruling that is held by the Supreme Court can be changed. All it takes is for another case to get up high enough to them to where they have to rule on it. Then they overturn a previous precedent. It's not a law. And that's why we find ourselves where we are right now, where, a bunch of old dudes who still have the means to do whatever they want. And a bunch of their friends is like, yeah, no, we don't want. It's not so much that they are outlawing or banning abortion. They're just saying, y'all handle that amongst yourselves. We don't really want to have nothing to do with it. And so here's where we are. Folks, Chuck, Sharon.
Sharon, you want to go first? I can go next.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay.
No,
sure. Well, one of the things that Joyce said that is spot on is that, during my very first week of law school at the University of Florida, and it's so funny when we got to law school, everybody was so excited to be there and nervous, scared, all of that. Everybody had watched the paper chase. And so you're sitting there, just not knowing what to expect. And so, your professors get up and they start teaching in the Socratic method. And so everybody wants to sound really erudite and just brilliant and what have you. And for the most part, most of us were pretty bright people that got there to that stage. There were 1 or 2 people that I wasn't so certain about, but for the most part, everybody was intelligent. And so in that very first week, I remember one professor posed the question, what are laws? What makes laws? And so it was interesting. He went around the room and everybody was giving these long, eloquent, waxing philosophically type of answers. I think I might have gone on and on and on myself. And then he kind of like, after we got done, looked at us and said, the law is whatever you make it to be. The will of the majority make it to be. And and that struck me, as a 23-year-old kid, because I guess instinctively I knew that, obviously, being with my history background and what have you, and understanding, Joy, what you just said about Plessy was the law of the land 1 minute, and next thing you know, it wasn't. But at the same point in time, it's no less frustrating because, as I posed earlier this week, y'all, it's really a form of apartheid. Like if you look at all the polling data, across the world, across the United States, the majority of Americans support abortion rights. They do. Men, women, white, black, other, whatever, right? And so, but what we have watched, especially those of us in our generation, we are old enough to have seen this all play out. We were children when you started hearing about what Pat Robertson and Falwell and all those guys, and what was that boy? I think Ralph Reed, and what have you, who looked like he was about 16 years old, and he was considered the Republican boy wonder. And you started seeing them putting together all of these groups like James Dobson's The Family Council and the Moral Majority and all of this blah, 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 right? And they were singularly focused on one main issue, and that's abortion. Yeah, sometimes they would get off into the weeds, what they would consider to be the weeds, and they would talk about homosexuality. They would talk about other issues that the family values type Republicans didn't agree with. But the baby, no pun intended, was abortion. Always was. And they slowly but surely have put things into place to get where they can spike the football this past week. And with that in mind, it's almost mind-boggling to see how it all went down. But I am here to give some hope, which is the fact that, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit further here this evening. There are things on the federal level that can be done. Before we came on air, Joy and I were talking about our frustrations with Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, and some of the other, Democratic members of Congress who are all upset. But they should have been able to see this coming, because we've been warning that this day was coming, I guess, ever since 2016, in November of 2016, when Hillary Clinton lost. And so with that in mind, it is not cool. But at the same time, this is what happens when folks fail to put the greater good into context. And I'm calling out you Democrats, or we Democrats, because I'm a Democrat too. But at the end of the day, and I think, Joy, you and I said this last week at the end of the show, I supported Bernie Sanders in the primary. Bernie Sanders lost. So I was riding with Team Hillary Clinton from that point on. And unfortunately, there were too many millions of our fellow Democrats who were still talking Bernie or bust, or like I wrote the other day, they were, supporting all sorts of off-brand
Jill Stein,
fifth party candidates that aren't going to do anything. And now we've got 3 conservative justices who sided with Alito and Thomas, and they're all Trump appointees. And now we're not going to have abortion as, the strict law to land across the country. But I do give this last comment for now, which is what's going to happen is, Joy, you hit it on the head. It's kicking it back to the states. So essentially, it doesn't mean that abortion all across America is going to be gone. It won't. But what's going to be is it's going to be way difficult depending on where you live. So if you live down here in the deep South, like the 3 of us do, you're going to probably have to travel a ways to go and get a safe and legal abortion. You're going to have to cross state lines into a blue state to be able to get it done. That is, unless you're wealthy and you've got really good insurance and you can go to your private doctor to get it done. But I look forward to talking about all that too, because see, that's the shell game that the Republicans play. They still going to have their abortions. Trust you me. But they go to Dr. So-and-so. Dr. So-and-so doesn't have to report what that medical procedure was to any government data collecting agency. So with that, we're going to be all right. But I hope this lights a fire in this 2022 election season. Sharon, what's your thoughts, love?
Whew, you two have said a lot, right? One thing I want to note, they want to do what you just did. They want us to keep saying the word abortion over and over and over again. I ain't gonna lie about your seventh time I started cringing, right? Because they want it to be something so questionable in mindsets, right? We're not just all politicals. A lot of us are moms and families and grandmas and you know, people who have regrets, people who you know, everybody ain't, you know, just abortion, right? That was something that was said and coined of a necessity of rarity, right? So I'll be a little more PC and I'll talk about women's choice, right? And I say that because this is so transactional, right? They want us to spiral into the history of the courts because we're intelligent people, right? This is not an intelligent game, right? This is how do we get Ukraine off the screen, right? This is how we get our domestic agenda back in the conversation, right? And let's dial back not too long ago, since we're talking about from 2020, which I'm not going to beat up on the Dems because we won in 2020 and we did our work, right? And I understand everybody wants to go back to 2016, but I'm not going to lose hope because we won in 2020 and we won very stealthily and we did the work, right? I say that because abortion is just the next wedge issue on their 4-card deck. Let's remember back in our day, all three of our day, where the boogeyman was affirmative action.
Yep.
Right? The new boogeyman is called Black Lives Matter, woke, and CRT. They got a 3-hand deck for the one boogeyman affirmative action because one Florida Chuck was 22 years ago. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So right here in the great state of hypocrisy. Yeah. Right. And then the number 2 wedge issue was 2006 when the Black churches were populated with pictures of 2 men kissing. Right. That was the wedge issue. Right. LGBTQ same-sex marriage. What's the wedge issue? It's parallel today. Transgender rights, right? That we coined Don't Say Gay. That didn't come from them. That came from us, right? But it's all about transgender rights, right? It's all about Boosie and Dwayne Wade. Okay, let's not, it ain't that deep, people. This ain't that intelligent of an argument. True. Right? So what was in 2006 with the Patriot Pastors of Ohio is today transgender rights, parental rights, because it was called Patriot Pastors back then, Joy. Today it's called parental rights and mothers of liberty, right? Because I meet with them on Tuesday. We're going to have that in next week, right? Okay. And when I think about, we're now on to number 3, the good old big A word, right? You notice the conversation all week has not been pro-life versus pro-choice. It's been about abortion. Like we sit around the dinner table saying, damn it, I want my right to have an abortion. We don't do that. We don't do that. They want us to keep saying abortion until it starts going like this 53-year-old woman is like, I'm tired of it.
They also,
right?
I just want to add in, they also like to tie in this idea of free abortion every Saturday night. Like people just running around raping and scraping. Like this is, I remember those jokes that used to go around. It's never been free. It's never been on the table. And insurance still doesn't have to cover it for you to allow the choice. And so again, like you said, they'll cover over everything, but please continue.
So let's be very clear. Y'all remember that wall that was supposed to be built? Y'all remember the wall? Okay, wait for it. Right. It's issue number 4. Okay. It's coming up. Stay tuned. Okay, remember this conversation. So the 4 major wedge issues are Black people, gay people, people who want their uterus vacuumed out,
right,
and the illegals. Okay, so that's their 4-hand deck, 4-card deck. Every midterm, They reclass it. They, find out what's the messaging, and I'll be very, parental rights works, right? Parental rights work. COVID is yesterday, so they had to find something else to get under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming back. People getting COVID at home, but we COVID fatigued. So we just like, we're going to have it. We're going to be miserable for 2 weeks. We're going to stay home and we're going to press on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until a bunch of more people start dropping dead again, right? So that fatigue, that nastiness, that need, like somebody said the other day, why would somebody sit home and be so cruel to just light a fire on the internet and let them? I'm like, because they ain't got no friends. Don't act like they just wake up. They have an opportunity for lonely, miserable, exiled people who have a vocabulary to ignite a flame on the internet and get all this attention. Don't act like it's just some sinister person sitting home. We have unleashed crazy. Mm-hmm. So when this issue and the Supreme Court justices that are behind it, or better yet, the leaker, we don't know if the leaker came from the left or the right. Because a show enough crazy person on the right might have thought this would have ginned them up. So that investigation, the civility of what could be behind all of this, because there ain't nothing civil nowadays, right? No. It's about, where does it lead? Will it gin up a base? Because we have been pretty quiet, right? I said, a lot of people must be doing pretty good right now because we've been pretty quiet. So this is yet society's way of waking up somebody. Mm-hmm. But when those of intelligence, Chuck, like how you broke it down, the court system, right now, America is hanging on one string of Ukraine.
Yeah.
They did a test run on January 6th.
Mm-hmm. They did a test run before that when they tried to kidnap, what was it, the governor of Michigan?
Gretchen Whitmer.
And people just got, thank you. So they've been doing these little testers. They did that same foolishness up in Oregon, upstate of Washington. I'm thank you for reminding us of that, Joy. So I think about, are you ready? I think about, are we ready? Right? Because crazy is amongst us. Crazy's running shit, right? Crazy is I got so many coins on who is behind this abortion rights issue, right? Y'all know how I feel already, right? So I'm just like, go ahead, Joy.
I wanted to jump in. There's actually a guy that I follow on TikTok called Uncle Dam, Uncle.Dam. He is the coolest, smoothest brother out there. He's total zaddy, but he has a theory that I actually was able to pull, and I'm going to show that to y'all real quick.
Guilty. That motherfucker's.
I do not claim to be a detective. I do not know who leaked the draft abortion ruling. I do know that the nation's full attention is on abortion rights. I do know whoever leaked the opinion would need motive, opportunity, and access. I do know a lone dissenting judge would be highly motivated to create a diversion, given the opportunity to step out of the scrutiny of the American gaze with documents he already has access to. Praise the sixth.
I am so glad I'm seeing that for the first time, Joy. I'm so glad I didn't press, I can't open your TikTok. So I love it. Hey, that's my new boyfriend. Hey, I'm glad he said it because I ain't getting sued.
Right. His TikTok gets taken down every week.
He
and if you missed it, like the sign he had in the back said, "Bring Brittany Granger home."
I loved it. Mm-hmm. Right. I loved it.
He got a point. I'm just saying, if you see a bunch of missiles coming at you and you can deflect, I'm just saying there is merit to the theory.
There's a lot of merit to the theory.
Jenny, I don't know what that was. That's what that was. But we got a whole lot of people out here right now. All what gets me is, again, going back to the pink hat crew. Tell your husbands, tell your fathers, tell your mothers who overwhelmingly voted, was it 54% or so voted for Trump and saw nothing wrong with it. And there's so many people, to your point, Sharon, about all the different spokes of the attack plan that they have. They've got 3, maybe 4 things that they really focus on, and they pick one and they go for the one. Everything else falls to the wayside. We get in this one. The Democrats, on the other hand, try to be jack of all trades. And today it's gay rights, and tomorrow it's affirmative action, and the next day it's women's issues, and then it's trans issues, and then it's this, and then it's that, and then now we got to worry about the kids at the border. And so we're spinning all these plates and doing none of it well. And we also have people that will die on every hill, and so if everybody's dying on every hill, there's nobody left to fight. And so the other side is like, yeah, brutality, and we don't have the moral high ground, and half our people are, engaging in pedophilia and, smoking lines of coke off of a 12-year-old's ass, but abortion, no. And so they stayed the course, and they have gotten what they wanted. And meanwhile, everybody else is over here like, wait, what? Like they just didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming at all. Oh my God.
And so
Oh
I'm
my God.
saddened.
Can you do that again
by-
for me?
Go
Can
ahead.
you do that again? Can you do Becky again for me?
Yeah. Wait, what?
You got found down pat, Joy.
Oh, Father God.
'Cause I've heard it a lot.
You grew up in the 5th ward.
Third ward. Close enough. Though.
Close enough. Okay.
Oh my God.
But there's a comment here, Andrew. The Webster decision in the late 80s brought people out of the woodwork. And this was essentially 2 generations ago at this point. We took to the streets, people turned up, turned out. We hounded Martinez at every turn. And I pray this motivates the masses. And I think there is some merit to that, because if I remember the statistics, roughly 80% of the American population, and this is all nonpartisan, 80% are in favor of some allowable level of the woman's right to choose in particular situations. If there is sexual assault involved, if a juvenile is involved, if the woman's life is in danger, if the child's life will not be viable, that there's lots of reasons to end a pregnancy if it's going to be misery for everyone, including the child. And so to force people to give birth to and take care of their own misery is a form of torture. And to scare people into doing what you want them to do, or that is the consequence, that is a form of oppression and control. And now they're looking at oppressing and controlling. I won't say 50%, because there's women like me that I pulled all that shit out. You can't do nothing to me. I'm just gonna be a Jezebel. And once Gilead comes in, I'm gonna be in the off-brand house. But at least 30% of our population will feel as if they have nowhere to go, no support, their lives are in danger. And what could end up happening is people won't go into gynecology on the off chance that they could end up with having higher insurance rates, higher chance of being sued, higher chance of going to jail, and then you won't have enough people to deliver healthy babies. I mean, there's a whole lot going on with this potential decision.
Yeah.
You're going to end up looking up in Texas like this, like, welcome to Gilead, population uterus, while you sitting there screaming, but her emails. Yeah. How you feel now, Becky?
Yeah. And then it's also the residual issue from this too, which is once the Supreme Court turns federalist, and in that regards, meaning back to that whole states' rights crap, watch and see all sorts of other issues that we thought would be good law for the remainder of our lives are going to start to be an issue. I was talking the other day in our chat group about the whole concept that they've already started floating some of these test cases, like Sharon was saying, up, like in terms of we don't believe that a private restaurateur should have to serve the LGBTQ community if they don't want to.
Mhm.
That's going to go back up the line. And if you're sitting there shrugging your shoulders saying, hey, I don't care about the LGBTQ community. Yeah, but you care about it if you're Black. And then they start sending test cases up with regards to, well, maybe we don't have to serve you Negroes anymore. Yeah, the law has said we've had to since 1964, but maybe that Civil Rights Act of 1964 isn't as solid as we thought, right? And so you got to be extremely careful where you're going with these people. I even saw, Joy, where your old home state's governor, Greg Abbott, within 24 hours of the leak, was talking about, well, I want my attorney general and to consider suing because I don't believe the state should necessarily have to pay for public education. And for those of us who have been watching it for years, the GOP has always been advocating for what? Charter schools, private things of that nature, eliminating the whole concept of having the state or the local governments having to pay for the public education, when you really consider that the majority in a lot of these states, the majority of the kids that are in public school are, drum roll, they look like us, right?
Yep.
And so, it's a lot more at stake than just, the whole Roe versus Wade issue. We've got some tough times ahead with this, the five, so to speak. And, it's one of those things where I had hoped 2 years ago, and it doesn't look like we're going to get this, so it ain't no need for me to go on and on about it. I really would have liked to have seen the Supreme Court expanded beyond 9. It has been well over 100 some odd years since we've had an expansion. A lot of people don't understand that 9 was not set in 1787. It was expanded up from 5 to 9 over periods of time and what have you. And our population has exploded as such that actually 11 to 13 justices would be warranted based upon where we are now population-wise, as opposed to where we were in the late 1800s when we had that last bump up from 7 to 9, if I'm not mistaken. You'll remember from history that Franklin Roosevelt did try to what they call pack the court and get more justices in the 1930s. It didn't happen for him, but it's not to say that his mind was not in the right place. But it's not going to happen now either. I don't think that the Biden administration has the desire to take that on. I'm not even sure really at this point whether the votes would be there to even make that happen.
Right.
In the Senate, where you've got Sinema and Manchin sitting there as Republican light. But again, these are the things that, as Democrats, most of us are Democrats or independents that watch this show. I know we've got 1 or 2 conservatives who might be watching. But for the most part, I have always admired in the Republican Party in that regards, in terms of setting a focus and marching toward it. They march right toward it, even if they've got the village idiot who is leading the party. And Donald Trump definitely qualified as the village idiot. But at the end of the day, he's gone. But his legacy will always be, we'll be dead in the ground. And his legacy is not going to be January 6th. I mean, yeah, they'll talk about that in the history books. But his legacy is going to be those 3 justices that are going to be for a long time doing a lot of BS. So we've got to get ready.
We can lay. I'm a reaching for some things right here, and I know I'm reaching when I do this. But we can lay our current situation at the hands of 2 white women, Susan Collins and Jill Stein. I know we're going back to 2016, but Jill Stein drops out the race. Those votes more than likely go to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton becomes president. We don't get these 3 justices. We also don't get these 3 justices if Susan Collins don't sit there believing the lies and taking candy from strangers once again like a gullible jackass. And so we can say that it's the men that are doing things. And one thing I did want to bring up is people say, how come the Republicans and the Democrats don't do this? We know the Republicans are wrong. How come the Democrats don't do X, Y, Z and let this go? Well, because a majority of the Democratic representatives in the House and the Senate are also men who went to the same colleges as these men on the other side, have the same misconceptions. They may have a desire to want to do better, but they don't have the knowledge to understand how preposterous certain things are. If you have a room full of men who all think that you can carry a pregnancy to term in your fallopian tube, and that is not going to murder you, and that it can be transplanted into the uterus through some kind of miracle surgery that has never been invented. If you think, and I've heard this come out of men in Congress's mouth, if you think that a woman's body will reject sperm just because she doesn't like the sex, so that if she's getting raped, she can't get pregnant because the body will reject it because it does this magic thing. If you believe this bullshit, and again, we could be teaching sex education in schools that they want to defund. This is it all comes together, right? But yeah, this is a good point. You also don't get those 3 justices if RBG takes Obama's advice to retire. Yeah. And so it's a comedy, it's a tragedy of errors.
Tragedy.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. But once again, I ask myself, why do we not codify certain things? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Warren was getting dragged across Twitter when she was like, this is an outrage. People are like, do your job.
Right.
How come you haven't written this bill yet?
Right.
And I love Ocasio-Cortez and the squad and whatnot. Where they at? Put something up and see how it floats. Even if it's something very, very restricted, even if the restriction at the federal level is abortion is guaranteed. Well, a woman's right to choose whether or not to end a pregnancy is guaranteed under these circumstances. Mm-hmm. Something that most people in America would agree on. Mm-hmm.
Cory Bush has been out there hard.
Good.
Cory Bush has really been out there hard. Okay. I can't speak for the rest of them. And the other one that I don't know if she's considered a squad, I can't remember her name. Both of them have been very forthright with their personal experiences and their advocacy. I know there's some bills. Let me back up for a minute. Chuck said something earlier. I want to say, yeah, Chuck, we've seen it come, but America has this way of believing that, yeah, we can see it coming, but they won't do that.
They'll never do that.
They'll never do, because we have precedents, right? We've had decades of false alarms, right? Mm-hmm. And what the Democrats have to come to terms with, and they'll never be all in on this is not a fair fight, right? So you have, I got to sleep with myself. I got to wake up in the morning. And that's what a lot of people are dealing with, right? They have small hypocrisies in their head, right? But they can't see, running the nation on a dogfight. Mm-hmm. It's just certain people most people are not cut out for that, right? We have what we call vote storming, where traditionally we like, baby, them don't vote. We go to projects. That's where the literacy test comes in for them. And they see that our grassroots, it used to be grassroots for us. Well, they done turned over the trailer park, right? They done gave people their gods, their guns, and their liberty, right? They have found their niche that they look at us as bringing out unqualified people to vote that look like us, that we're just trying to empower people with their right to vote. They're like, okay, we're trying to empower our people with the right to vote just because you don't agree with them. And that's the population they're trying to maintain, because those people will go back and go back to sleeping with their cousins and shooting out in the field, right? I had to get a little bit of joy in me, right? So, they go back to their compounds, Chuck, and they not trying to make them retreat, right? We have to, the most strategic we have to be is to remember they could not get Mitch, what's his name? What's the Utah guy?
Mitt Romney.
Boy, that's called an old lady brain fart. They could not. I want to say Mitch McConnell. I'm like, that's not who I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. They couldn't get Utah and John McCain elected by their party against a black man. Right. Come on now.
Yeah.
Upstanding, clean cut white men, 2 all-American heroes. The son of a governor who, so You couldn't get Mitt Romney and John McCain elected because they're decent against a black man. So they know I don't have short memory. I just don't, right? I'm older I get, I got terrible short term. I can't find my keys that I just sat down, but I sure can give you some, old lady wisdom on we not looking at the long game, right? We could be upset about Hillary, but we got to see what they chose to do. This is about their vote. We wrong to tell about Hillary. That's on us. That's completely on us, right? They drew a line in the sand and said, no more reasonable people. that cut deep, didn't it?
Yeah.
No more John McCain's, no more nice guy, no more Mitt Romney's.
No
we
more
are
compromise.
done.
Going
We are
places.
done with you Negro sympathizers. We are done with you Negro sympathizers. You hear me?
Yeah.
And
So
once
that
again,
brings to mind. Go ahead.
all I got to say as I take a breath, watch Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
When you said that about no more reasonable people, no more compromise, no more middle of the road, no more reaching across the aisle, it reminds me of that quote, in any relationship, the person who will maintain the power in their relationship is the one who cares about it the least, because they will refuse to compromise. So basically saying, and we've seen this in some of our friends' relationships, the one that don't care about the other one is the one that always seems to be running things, right? And in the context of the United States, you got this bipartisan group. The one that cares least about the actual productivity and, longevity of the United States is the one that refused to compromise. They would rather burn this bitch to the ground. They would rather stir the ashes and salt the earth than ever compromise with the other side. And it didn't used to be like
Russia,
that.
or are you talking about America?
I'm talking about
I'm
us.
sorry. Are you talking about Russia?
I'm talking
I
about the
think you're talking
United
about Russia.
States.
Oh, okay. Like I said, Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah.
Texas. Don't think that Texas, all the militias that started up after Obama became president, it started then, right? I think we went from like 70 something to like 260 militias across the country. They ain't never gave up them guns. They've been stockpiling canned goods and learning how to trap squirrels for the last 15 years or so, whatever. And they've only gotten stronger and faster, and they've been recruiting, et cetera. And they're all across Middle America, all across the South. Texas has got a militia in every 5 blocks. And if they decide, like hypothetically, let's say, I don't know, something that's touching Oklahoma does not outlaw abortion rights, and you go to Oklahoma, or you move to Oklahoma, or you try to get into Oklahoma, right? They can start to say, we're going to go save the innocents and invade another state. It won't be the government. It won't be any recognized military faction. It'll be Jack and his buddies. Because, they already started doing this thing where, running across state lines to preserve something is okay, Kyle Rittenhouse, right? So again, all these little test cases that are out there. And then you have a government that won't understand or know how to react to state-on-state crime. This is in-state violence. We're sending the Coast Guard, whose side are they on? Well, we don't want to take sides because the Democratic government will be ineffective. And this is how you get Gilead. This is how you end the United States, is infighting. Every major empire is destroyed from within, right? This could be the beginning of that. I'm not trying to be a doomsday person, but I am trying to say, watch backs, because I know there was a law. Y'all help Chuck if you can remember where this was. They were trying to pass a law in one of these crazy red states where if you even went across state lines to have a procedure done, it was a criminal action.
I want to say that was Mississippi.
It sounds like some bullshit Mississippi would do. This is a mess. Meanwhile, we're out here talking about them wanting to have some moral rights and whatever. Meanwhile, you got Cawthorn out here dry humping his friend in the face, talking about, oh, we were just playing. Don't you ever play with me by tapping me in the head with nothing around your genital area. I'm just saying that is not how we play as
Let
adults.
me ask y'all something, because my eyes don't work as well as they used to even 30 years ago. Was he in that picture with a man or a woman?
A man.
Okay, see, that goes back to what we're talking about too. That whole hypocrisy, right? The whole, oh, we're the family values, we're against the LGBTQ community. Yeah, and then there you are talking about you're playing with your buddy. Don't know buddies of mine. We didn't play like that, right? And so it's again, and there's nothing wrong if you are homosexual. If that's what you choose, cool. But there's a whole party of people just like Madison Cawthorn who are going to try to excoriate people who that's their sexual preference when it's their sexual preference too, right? So all I try to say is stop being a hypocrite. You're out here having abortions. Your wife, your side chick, your daughter. You say, hell, some of these Republicans take their own daughters to the clinic, right?
Yeah,
Not to the clinic.
They private doctor.
Right, they had a procedure. And you're out here having circle jerks and playing around with each other at the golf course and all this type of stuff. Stop faking like a lot of y'all aren't homosexuals too. I mean, that's one of the main reasons Cawthorn got in trouble a couple weeks ago, because he started talking about all the coke binge parties and all that type of stuff that are going on up there amongst the GOP. And they're like, wait a minute, pal. Now, hold on. We're not supposed to talk about that. Out in public, fella, and so
you know how much these members of Congress make? Do you know how much money members of Congress makes?
I actually don't.
Okay, they make close to $200,000 a year, and they have a $2 million budget for staff, minimum, right? And this child, this child is a member of Congress. He has lost his mind because he has too many available resources for somebody that's not mature enough.
He's a kid.
They let the kid in the candy store,
They let the kid run Disney World.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's one step beyond destruction. They will remove him from office, right? And then he's going to expose all of them because he is a lightning rod. He is a lightning rod.
That is one of the issues with the younger generation is they grew up on social media and they don't give a fuck about,
like, why would a member of Congress allow somebody to videotape such a thing? Much less release it, right? Because he thinks he's playing Fortnite, right? This is illogical behavior, right? This is illogical behavior. And these clowns, right, elected this child and Marjorie Turner, whatever the hell her name,
Marjorie Taylor Greene, goofy.
I mean, we are not dealing with a civilized society because these people didn't elect themselves. So that means there's a significant population that thinks your conduct, your personhood, your representation is acceptable to speak on my behalf. That's what worries me.
Yeah, because Mike makes a point. Those videos are from before he was elected. So you would think, well, there's also the question of people doing their due diligence. People probably didn't look it up, didn't care, didn't bother to research the way they would have if he was Black. I'm just saying. But
this is true.
And so they let him slip in there, and now he's in there. And then there's a whole thing. This has nothing to do with my job. Oh, but it was all a problem when Clinton was in there playing around with cigars and whatnot. But he could still do his job. I mean, we already understand the privilege that someone that looks like him gets. But I am interested to
his
see
age. Those videos are not 20 years old.
No, because he ain't that old. Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I'm interested to see because they believe in a clapback. And my experience, and this is just my personal experience with several white men between the ages of 25 and 38, 30, 35, somewhere in there, they have to have the last word. They were born to think it doesn't even matter if the last word is okay, fine, good, well, like or just LOL. If they can't think of nothing else to say, they will LOL you to death, but they're going to get the last word in whatever discussion you're having. And you learn over time to just let them have it, because otherwise you're going to be there all night. The reason I bring this up is he's already confirmed on Twitter. Yeah, that was me. And you can't blackmail me. I tell on myself, maybe not the right move, son, but okay. But this idea of he's going to have the last word, he will, and I predict through my limited exposure to that demographic, I predict that he is going to drag everybody down with him. Anything that he knows or has heard a rumor about is going to be tweeted if they try to do something to him.
Yeah, because there's no filter with a lot of these ones, and it's just like Matt Gaetz. You know, he's got a whole federal investigation going about him having underage sex and trafficking children, right? And yet he's trolling women the other day after the Roe thing about lonely women who are eating their microwave dinners, and you're just sitting there thinking like, a gang of trolls. Social media has its great benefits, don't get me wrong. But one of the worst aspects of social media has been the fact that degenerates have a platform, and then it can also attract fellow degenerates, and it's just ridiculous. Thank you, Cecily. Yeah, I had to get him the other day because I don't like that dude. I just don't. And it's one of those things where he's not as bright as he thinks that he is. He's definitely not a moral individual. And at the end of the day, I struggle with why he is even in Congress, except for the fact that I have worked over in the Panhandle, and I know that there are a lot of people in the Panhandle. Joy, I think you were sharing just a few seconds ago. They agree with the idea of he gives it to the libs, he owns the libs, he's, you know,
and it's about the moment.
Right, exactly. Instead of analyzing like, this dude's an idiot, and there are other Republicans who are not as idiotic as he is that could better advocate whatever it is that you believe in without being a buffoon on national stage. So again, it's ridiculous. So
we're living in a combination of Idiocracy, if you remember that movie, what was it, Owen Wilson as the lead, and what's that dude's name, the one that was in White Chicks with all the muscles. He was the president and he was a wrestler, like, which is pretty damn close. We live in a combination of that and that recent movie Don't Look Up, which if you haven't seen it, our audience, I think if you haven't seen Don't Look Up on Netflix, you should check it out.
You gotta check it out.
It had me thinking, like, I know like legit went outside, like,
right.
Because it was so meta. I was like, you know what? I could see them making a movie. Terry Crews, yes, thank you. I could see them making a movie to get us to recognize it's a motherfucking comic coming. You can check this shit out. And yeah, this whole idea of ignore your own well-being, best interest, safety, etc., in order to win in the moment. That's what I see happening a lot. You know, there's just so, I'm trying to keep up with the, you know, don't forget Gary's in line with the old school white male thing. And women were property and they're supposed to be stupid. Yep. Getz. He's talking about Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
The Republicans are reactionary. You're right. Everything they have is built on hate. I teach this in the classes that I do when I talk about the different type of biases that people have. The Neuro Leadership Institute has a 5-word acronym for all the different types of biases you can have: similarity, experience, expedience, distance, and safety. The safety bias is the hardest one to get people to break out of, because safety is part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's where you come into, you know, I want to feel safe in my home. I want to have food, shelter, water, freedom from harm. And so when you want people to, if you want to trigger them, the easiest way to do it is to prey on their safety bias. You know, that whole, I fear for my life. And so anything I do is understandable because I fear for my life. And you give them something to fear and they believe that. And they will act on that because I can understand how you fear for life. I want to be safe too. And you tell them they're coming for your guns. They're coming for your children. They're coming for your way of life. They're coming for your liberty. They're coming for your money. They're coming for your jobs. The phrase is they're coming for you. It's the boogeyman. And it works. It works every time. Every time, because people sit at home and go, well, I got to protect my kids. That's how you end up with somebody going shoot up a pizza parlor looking for Hillary Clinton in the back, because they got to protect something. And they've been led to believe that doing all of this nonsense will keep them safe. And to tell somebody your belief system or whatever is ridiculous, what they hear you saying is put yourself in danger for my beliefs. And they're not going to do it. And it wouldn't make sense to do it. But we've got to stop getting them to believe that they're in danger in the first place, because that's how we get killed. All of a sudden, anybody, even remotely Blackish looking, you know, is a danger. And that's a possibility too. You know, you talk about rolling everything back. Isn't the Loving case also just a Supreme Court ruling
It is.
against interracial marriage?
It
Yeah,
is.
or for interracial marriage, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As well as one of the reasons I think they stuck so hard, and again, I'm not the legal person, but I think they stuck so hard on Roe v. Wade is because everything else builds off of that. So you take away gay marriage, you can take away transgender medical procedures, which they always trying to fight against anyway. You can take away affirmative action, anything that builds on that idea of privacy and civil rights comes crumbling down. You take that one, that's the linchpin, everything else buckles. And I can see them going for all of that. Okay, I'm done with that. Y'all, anybody else want to tag in?
No, we good. We Gucci.
You know what? We do have some good news. And I'm going to slide these in while I'm talking about all the different ways of intersectional marginalization. Congratulations to Corinne. Is it Jean-Pierre?
Jean-Pierre, yes.
Corinne Jean-Pierre, the first Black woman, the first openly LGBTQ same gender loving press secretary in U.S. history. Go ahead, girl.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's awesome news.
And Haitian American.
And Haitian American. You're right. You're right. She checked all the ERG boxes, right?
She breaking barriers.
Get it. Yeah,
and seriously, she's a friend. She's a beautiful human being. She is so brilliant. You know, she is just so brilliant, but class, she just exudes class, but she's going to be a strong press secretary. And she is the right type of representation that they need. Jen Psaki was a beast. I love me some Jen Psaki.
She was cool.
She's somebody you want to go to happy hour with, right? But Corinne is just representation. I've had the privilege of knowing her over a decade, and to see her elevated to this post is really not a surprise. It really is not a surprise. And it just further, this is not a campaign pitch. This is just honest. It's a further example of how Biden has truly stuck to his guns about representation. This is not, Supreme Court justice is a big damn deal, right? Yeah. But Black women's presence in that administration, we can't take lightly, right? It's not just one Black president. He got a Black administration, right? Mm-hmm. It ain't just a vice president, Black woman. He got a Black administration.
That's right. And she also put her body on the line to defend Vice President Harris when she was on the campaign trail. I forgot all about that. Thank you, Patrice.
Yeah, she's a special woman, and I'm glad she got moved over to POTUS and is in this fierce position. Y'all gonna hear and see a lot of her, but that's yet another very fierce, forward-leaning position that a Black woman has been put in that White House.
And, I got another little string of good news for us all. As we talk about them trying to roll everything back and deny us our humanity left and right, there is a little point of light here coming out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah. The judge agrees to let the Tulsa Race Massacre reparations lawsuit proceed. And there are only 3 people who are still alive from the original Greenwood Massacre. And they are fighting for justice for them and for their descendants. One of them is 107 years old and still hanging in there. God bless him. But they're letting that reparations lawsuit proceed. My supposition is because it is so encapsulated, it is a group of people and in one area as opposed to the entirety of the United States. But I'm glad to see this step being taken.
Yeah. It's a good step. It's long overdue. It's frustrating that it's even being litigated. You would like to think that there would be enough common decency to say, hey, let's put some money on the table to try to do something, because you can never make what happened go away. But the thing that has always tripped me out about Tulsa, as well as Rosewood here in Florida, in this January coming up, will be the 100th anniversary, January 2023, of the Rosewood Massacre. What really trips you out is the fact that not only have we all learned about how vibrant these areas were with Black businesses, Black homes, Blacks just doing the thing, but what's frustrating is, particularly when the first time I went to Rosewood, I drove down there, found it after I got out of court in Levy County, which is the county within which Rosewood exists. And as I walked around, what really tripped me out after I looked at the marker and went on a nice little leisurely walk, all white people live on those parcels of land. White
Mhm.
folks. And I bring that up because that was Black land. And so the question is, yeah, you murdered the people who lived there, or you scattered them because they took off because they didn't want to get murdered.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that the title still shouldn't reside with the descendants of the individuals who own that land. And we all know that here in America, land is wealth. And so at the end of the day, that's one of my bigger frustrations is the
Mhm.
concept of, yeah, $100,000, $500,000. It's great. Don't get me wrong. We all could use it. But there's even more than that that's been lost because the land is gone in many of these
Yeah.
instances. And so, yeah, it's frustrating, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have anything else I can add other than it's just frustrating.
I remember watching the movie Rosewood with Ving Rhames the star. Ving Rhames' character is the only character in that movie that was not canon or not factual.
Yeah.
And we took some girls, my chapter of Delta, we took some girls up there, our Delta gyms, our high school girls, to see the museum and to see the memorial and everything. And we had them, it was a 2.5 hour drive. We watched the movie on the way up. And we got there, and the folks who were, proctoring the tour, we told them, we showed them the movie Rosewood. We don't know how accurate that was. They're like, oh, it's accurate. The only thing that was different was they made up Ving Rhames' character so they could explain a lot of things really easily. But the shooting the woman on her porch, the chasing an entire town of Black people down over the actions of a white man, that this white woman didn't want her husband to know she had been stepping out on him, and she got beat by her boyfriend who left through the Black town. And that's why the dogs came through there. They burned the whole town to the ground, stole all their stuff. Then when everybody left, the people that escaped and weren't murdered in their homes, when they returned a couple weeks later, the white folks were still there like, nah, you come up in here, we're going to kill you. Absolutely. And they took their land because they couldn't return under penalty of death. And then they parceled their land out and sold it to the white folks who are probably ancestors of the folks that live there right now.
Joy, I'm not going to lie. I read, I'm talking about just maybe 2 years ago. I was down at FAMU High School, down at the old high school, fooling around at a program and started thumbing through a book that was in the library. I was waiting for a program to start. And within that book was a research paper done by a Florida State University PhD student back in the 1990s, when the Florida legislature was still considering whether to give some form of reparations to the living survivors. And the part that really stood out to me, because when you remember when you took those girls for the Delta gyms there, they had that big plaque out there to commemorate what happened. And the state of Florida only counted about 5 Blacks dead, I think maybe 7, 4 or 5 whites. They kept the numbers real low. In this one narrative, now the movie, God rest the soul of Brother John Singleton, in the movie was far more accurate in regards to, like you're saying, the scores, if not hundreds of people that were slain over the course of those 3 days. But there was a white guy that was interviewed by the state of Florida, by this particular PhD candidate, right? And when she was interviewing him, his comment, he had to be in his mid 80s at this point. He was so he was a young guy when Rosewood happened. This is the 90s. So he was about 10, 11 years old, but he stayed right there in that area. And his recollection, and it's so funny to even look at the notes at the bottom in terms of how sick his racism was, even in his 80s, because he was making comments to the effect of, there was mass grave, and my daddy and my uncles, they were killing them in words for days. And he was like, I hunted and fished these parts around here my whole life. He said, hell, in the 1950s and 60s, I'd still be out on the water, going up and down the river or the lake or whatever, and we still were running across skulls and bones and what have you. And so you just stop and you realize how terrifying that had to be to not make it, or to see your own mother, grandmother, friends getting shot and killed. And yet at the end of the day, there are people in Florida. I kid y'all not. I don't think I learned about Rosewood until I was maybe in 9th or 10th grade in Tallahassee, Florida. And what's crazy is my own paternal grandmother was born about 20 miles away from where it happened. And so, not saying that she was in it, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying she was adjacent to it in the county over in Dixie County. And yet no one had ever even told the little budding Chuck, the historian, like, hey, this is what happened down there. It wasn't until I think it was a 60-minute special on it in the mid-'80s one night. And everybody in my family was looking around at each other like, y'all ever heard about this? We had never heard about what happened there. So CRT now is nothing but what has always been, which is they suppress certain things. And again, it's about that land. I think it's Patrice Marshall McKenzie. It's really about the land. I'm frustrated about that. I'm like, that's our land that these folks have built houses on and just walking around like it's nobody's business.
You know what? If you haven't heard the story of Bruce's Beach in California, that's another heartbreaker, because Black folks owned a parcel of land that led out to the beach, but because white folks didn't want to see them on the beach, they declared eminent domain, snatched those people's land, and turned it into nothing for a long time. This place, and so now Black people had no place to go to get to the beach in California, and would not return that. Then when they didn't do anything with it, they were supposed to return that land to the family, and they wouldn't. And I think that land, last thing I remember hearing was it was worth maybe like $175 million today. You know, and they were just like, oh, we don't know. I don't know what we're going to do. I'm sorry. And so they're still fighting. I think the fight still continues, because what they do, you know, this is the government. This is the county, the city, you know, state government or whatever. They got deep pockets. They just wear you down. Because if they've taken the land that you would be using to generate wealth, what you going to use to fight them with? You know, you ain't got no money. Not that long money, not that generational continue to pay lawyers money. So they just hope that you give up and go away.
What's real about Rosewood, Chuck, when I was listening to you talk, was that Al Lawson led the legislation in the state of Florida to bring dignity to the story. And it was definitely, and should be definitely, one of his greatest legacies.
Amen.
As a member of the Florida legislature. I mean, we were still young, either just starting to be professionals, but watching the legislature have to make right and create it. I think that may have come after the movie. I don't know if it was before or after the movie, but having lived in the environment, and I think I was even working for him during that time, in his private company, I just remember just how much, to your point, people didn't know, that we just were not aware as Floridians of the tragedy. But that, you know,
so many people didn't hear about Tulsa.
Yeah. I mean, Tulsa, people still realizing what it is today.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's the story of America. I mean, Chuck, here, listening to you just made me think that, you know, May 20th is around the corner. And the more I get educated through the eyes of my son getting educated, right? And to know that I now live on the land that was Smoky Hollow, right? And to even think about Smoky Hollow, and when you started describing who lives in that neighborhood, I almost cringed. I was like, we're in the middle of debate right now outside my door about Smoky Hollow, that's now Cascades Park, right? And I got on my scooter and took my son around the corner, and during our Black family time, and got real educated about, because the shotgun houses, the frames that's in back of Cascade Park that looks like pavilions, those are the frames of the actual shotgun houses. And on the ground, the cement, Joy, is amazing. It took us we were like reading Cornerstones. The floor is an architectural layout of where their nightstands were, where their beds were, how small their closets were. So we're, having picnics on the pavilion, and we're actually standing on sacred ground where what was known then as shotgun homes are now architectural pavilions, but left the integrity of what you are standing on.
Sharon, I'm not going to lie to you. I was talking to a young man who's running for commission in Tallahassee, Terrence Barber, about a month ago, about how we were down in the whole Railroad Avenue area that's all refurbished down by Gaines Street. And, you know, all of that was black stuff back in the day. So for those who aren't familiar with Tallahassee and FAMU and Florida State, FAMU and Florida State are quite literally separated by a railroad track. And for the most part, a good portion of across the railroad track, which leads to what's now Florida State, was still all black back in the day, all the way up to where the Civic Center is, all the way down Gaines Street. My mother lived on Gaines Street growing up in an area, interestingly enough, called White City, even though it was an all black area in Tallahassee.
That's how you hide in plain sight.
Right. And so what's crazy is where my grandparents and mother grew up, all those houses are long gone. And all you see now, it's weird, Joy. And this is what Terrence and I were talking about, Sharon. On the one hand, it's beautiful. Like if you come to Tallahassee and you ride up and down Gaines Street, it is gorgeous in terms of the new condos, new businesses, the cafes, gorgeous, right? But on the other hand, there's that part of me as a native, just like Sharon is talking about over there at Smoky Hollow, which is like, this ain't ancient history. I remember when my grandma and grandpa's house was right here. And I remember when you didn't see white students over in this section. And I'm not trying to be a racist or anything. I'm just being honest. It's sometimes weird when I'm riding through there. On the one hand, I'm like, boy, this is just gorgeous and picturesque, what we've done. And on the other, I'm like, there's white kids walking through FAMU's campus now. And that was something.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was like, I'm sorry, Chuck, you didn't get the memo? They crossed over the railroad track.
Exactly. It's
Joy, and I'm not joking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my girl, Carla, she's a Sharpie. She's like, I just have an attitude that they feel so comfortable to walk freely through our neighborhoods and not the least bit concerned about getting knocked over the head. Right?
Girl, remember Howard, they was letting their dogs like shit on Howard's campus?
Mm-hmm.
They was getting mad that they were being told not to walk through and bring their dogs on a private grounds.
Mm-hmm.
But they have literally crossed the railroad tracks, and now they're building about 2 miles worth of roadway from South Adams, the entrance of Cascade Park, so they have easier access to the beautification of downtown. A walkway that all we got, Joy, was the name FAMU Way. And it starts at Subway, Chuck. I drove it the other day because I'm like, I don't understand, from Subway that connects to South Adams, where the new railroad crossing, where the barbecue pit is right there, that I hope comes alive. Absolutely. Now that Costco's or whatever they call it, Costa's is gone.
It's gone.
Costa Subs is gone, right? That street goes all the way to the Rattlerhead bike rack. When we became not bike, what is it called? Skateboard.
Yeah, we're gonna be able to skate up and down it.
And since our mascot is so cute, Joy, they gave us the head, a Rattler head, like it's ours, but it's a not our people skate zone. They're gonna have regional skate competitions, skateboard competitions, right?
And Joy, what we're telling you is that even in our day, your head used to be on a swivel as a black person in some of these spots, like trying to, protect your neck. And now I roll down there, or I'm walking, and I'm like, boy, white folks just walking through here like zippity doo dah, zippity a, and like no stress. It is gentrification is something else. That is really
and they named everything railroad this, railroad that. Is railroad crossing, is railroad square, and then FAMU Way that leads to Doak Campbell Stadium. No, FAMU Way leads to their stadium.
Thank you.
Do you understand me, Joy? And it goes from Subway off of South Monroe Street all the way to, wait for it, Stuckey Street.
That is some bullshit.
And again, I grew up about a half a mile from Stuckey Street, Joy. And so it's a trip, because in my brain, as I ride through where I was born and raised, I'm like, 50 years from now, ain't none of this gonna be black, probably. Because Sharon,
10 years, they put a Publix there, boo. They put a Publix there.
Yeah,
it's going. Publics don't come to black neighborhoods.
Yeah, this ain't gonna be black even 50 years from now. It's a trip. Mm-hmm.
I saw the same thing when I lived in Houston recently. You know, I grew up in Houston, and I remember Fourth Ward was where all the drug addicts and homeless people were. Like downtown was abandoned for the most part, and there were certain streets that you didn't go. And I'm just going to make up a street because I don't want to cast any aspersions on my hometown. You know, so you going down, you know, Bottlenose Street, and you liable to get knocked in the head and robbed. Right when I was growing up, and now it's 2015, 2016. And I am, you know, manager big time at my corporation and everything. One of the girls that used to work for me has moved to the city. She wants to meet for dinner, trying to get a job. And so she was like, well, let's meet at this place. It's over on, you know, Bottleneck Street. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, yeah, this is a great little place they've opened up on Bottleneck Street. You sure you want to go there? Because the last I heard, they was robbing folks and beating you over the head.
Absolutely.
It's a whole like little shopping mall, and it's nice, and they got like the lights and stuff and the bike path. That's certain things that indicate gentrification. You get a bike path, you get some speed bumps, you get a Starbucks, you get a Trader Joe's, you know, you get refurbished roadways. You know, all of a sudden the pothole that's been there since you was a kid is now filled in. The whole street's repaved, you know, because they needed to make room for the bike track. So,
yeah, you see a lot of ditches on south side of Tallahassee where we skip rocks off of. Sometimes a fish or two might even get caught up in them ditches. I've even heard about even gators sometimes being in those ditches, right? And all those ditches are gone now. And I'm not saying that they had any aesthetic value when we were growing up, but it's just what you remember is slowly going away. And so I sometimes don't know how I feel about it, just to be dead honest with you. Like, again, on the one hand, the part of me that loves art and loves nature and loves seeing buildings erected is like, wow, that's really nice. And then the other part is like, but it ain't ours nice. It doesn't belong to us nice. Are we welcome in these spots anymore nice? Do you see where I'm coming from on that? It's a trip. Really
they pretty it up and then price it out from what the people who already live there can afford. And it's not about them, you know, in any old neighborhood, like well-settled neighborhood where you have older families or whatever living, there's a good chance that those property taxes have gone from $800 a year to $8,000 a year. And it's not that they can't afford their mortgage because they own the house outright, but property taxes are always going to be there. You know, property taxes is something all of a sudden somebody on a fixed income can no longer afford. Now grandma got to move in with her kids, whatever, and they sell the house for a quick bump, you know, pay off some of their bills, pay off college loans or whatever, put grandma in a home for the next couple of years. And now this whole area is priced out where black people can't even live in there. Not that all black people are poor. That's not the case at all. But I'm just saying it is more likely for a 35-year-old to have money to buy a house if they are not a person of color.
This is true. This is true.
I don't know how we got into gentrification from a woman's right to choose, but I mean, they gentrifying wombs now. You know, they just the white folks gonna just come take over everything.
There it is.
Like I said, get you a coochie hat.
Chew gum.
Versatile.
We can walk and chew gum.
Definitely walk and chew gum.
Exactly.
And smile and tell you about yourself all at the same time.
Exactly.
You know, I said we was gonna keep it short tonight, but there's a couple of things I did want to show. There was a mention of. I took us off. My bad. Hang on a second. I be doing too much. There was a mention of I think it was Patrice that mentioned having some form of, you know, vasectomy for men over a certain age, or let's stop making insurance pay for Viagra. Because I made that point on my personal Facebook page. I was like, you know what? Breast augmentation and Viagra for men is covered under most insurance, but we will declare, you know, why do I have to pay for that, you know, over another medical procedure? Medicine is medicine. Some of these are life-saving. I've never seen a woman life be in danger because she ain't had titties. Never seen that.
Yeah.
Never seen a dude say he gonna die if he can't get a boner in the next hour.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Never seen that. But here's a good idea. Like if they start to ban abortion across it, because they keep saying the reason is because a fetus is a living entity that deserves rights. All right, well, check this.
Okay, so here's what I think, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong because I have not looked it up to see if this already exists. So if I'm wrong, then fine. But here's what I think. If all these pro-life groups want to holler, scream, and shout about life begins at conception, right? Then we should be able to take out life insurance policies on embryos the minute we find out we're pregnant. And it should not matter how long the pregnancy lasts. If the pregnancy fails, we should get a payout. Also, the policy premiums cannot be price gouged. You know how they do for smokers and pre-existing conditions. You cannot do that because this is a blank slate. This is a new life. So there's no pre-existing conditions. Even if the parents have pre-existing conditions, there's no guarantee that the child is going to inherit said pre-existing conditions. Therefore, there too, you cannot price gouge and make it a higher policy premium because of it being an embryo. Also, it should be afforded to people who have embryos on ice with IVF. So if that embryo has been on ice and I make one premium payment towards my insurance policy and then I get the embryo transferred into my body and the pregnancy fails, I still get my payout. And you cannot set a limit to how much they set the policy for. So, because only the person who's carrying the embryo should be the one determining how much the policy should be worth. So whether or not they say they want to set a $50,000 life insurance policy on this embryo or a $50 million policy, as long as they can afford the premium, they should be afforded the policy. It's time we start thinking in terms of letting this unchecked capitalism that runs our legislature right now start working for us rather than against us. Or just fix the unchecked capitalism and let women have autonomy over their bodies.
I like her. So that is Bell Curve, BELLE_KURVE on TikTok. I like to give credit where credit is due. I follow her. That chick is hilarious. You should hear her talking to Jesus about her student loans. It's outrageous. But I
have a comment.
Okay.
Information is powerful. Mm-hmm. In some states, there are provisions of life insurance for unborn children. Right?
Now, is it the same states that are banning abortion?
So,
what you know?
The pro-life, I know some things, right? And particularly in the state of Virginia and military families, right? If your child is in your body for over 20 weeks, you don't have to pay for insurance. It's built into your benefits. And unbeknownst to you, if your insurance claim shows that you had a spontaneous death,
miscarriage,
your unborn child, miscarriage, it's a little further because it has to be 21 weeks. Whereas in the state of Virginia, 24 weeks, they will not resuscitate. So it's like I said, I'm very sensitive about this conversation for a number of reasons. This is one of them, right? And the pro-life movement is a lot more powerful and a lot more ingrained. But for military families, and particularly the state of Georgia is probably part of DMV, they have built-in provisions. I don't know when it started. I have never done that research now, but her commentary makes me want to research this because it's provocative, right? But trust, they've thought about that, right? And their pro-life agendas to say, yes, a fetus is viable. And after 21 weeks, if a miscarriage happens, premature death, you will get paid a life insurance policy with the death certificate.
That's interesting. So that still allows for banning of unwanted, terminating an unwanted pregnancy.
Until, it's to advance the pro-life agenda, right? Yeah. And a lot of people don't have a problem with it, right? Most people don't know about it. But if it happens, it's almost like a validation that your child was a human. It was a life loss. Yeah. And it combats. So, in a much more we pretty sober, but I don't want to go off on that tangent, but it's just the provocativeness of her statement, which may seem ill-conceived to some, is not.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is what I was trying to wrap my mind around, is like the from a statistical standpoint, the number of fertilized eggs is far greater than the number of fetuses that make it to 21 weeks, which is far greater than the number of live births. And so I'm sure that when they picked those numbers, 21 weeks, 24 weeks, there was some number crunchers in the back, like, here's where the payout is decent. You know?
Not just that, Chan, let me help you go further. This was done in the days of compromise, right? This was done in the days of rational thinking. Let's not be confused. Joe Biden ain't pro-choice, right? So he had to, say, I respect your right to choose, but ain't nobody talking about abortion back in the day, especially the Catholics, right? So, Chan, to your comment, yes, but that was when people said we believed in inching towards our victory, right? We didn't have to. These people that made these laws are not part of the microwave generation. They're not part of the insurrectionists. They're not part of tear all shit up. This was back in the day when it was yes, no. This is why laws passed about the 15 weeks recently. That's recent law. That's compromise law. Because no one ever thought we would be having this conversation about the overturn of Roe v. Wade. But so how can we get it closer to the reality that, it's a viable life? Because absolutely at 21 weeks, it's a viable life, right? But that's not a debate. The debate is just because I think that doesn't mean you have to make that same decision. Right. That's why I don't subscribe to the term abortion. I subscribe to it's your choice. Right. I don't have a discussion about whether or not you want your uterus sucked out. I don't want to be a part of that conversation because guess what? It's not my motherfucking business. Right. Right. It's me and my maker's business. It's me and my husband's business. However, I choose to do it. And it's not for you to debate whether or not he should be a part of the decision or me. That's my business. And that's what I love about when it was civilized, right? When the conversation debate was civilized, because all of the people on both sides of the aisles had to give a little to keep it civil. I kind of understand your part. I disagree. I can give you that. I can give you that. That's what compromise used to look like before everybody want to burn all shit down.
Yeah, that's what compromise still looks like. We just don't do it. I've never been pregnant, and I can't be now. I had a hysterectomy 10 years ago, but if I had, in my own personal view, depending on the year, and I will be honest about that, depending on the year, if I had been graduated from college and after my graduation, I got a job and everything, if I had gotten pregnant, I would have kept my child. However, I don't see whether or not any of my friends would have done the same. I don't see how that's my business. Right. I don't see how I can ascribe for them whatever sense of, moral high ground or just, scientific background, whatever it might be that would make me make my choice. That ain't how they made their choice. The way I cook my eggs is not the way somebody else cooked their eggs. That's a bad example. But, the way I cook my steak is not the way somebody else cooks their steak. So why should I tell them, medium rare is wrong. You better cook it well done. And you're like, I don't like it that way though. People should have the right, regardless of what that is, because again, we talk about overturning Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of resistance and talk around gender reassignment surgery, hormones for people who are undergoing, going through a transition, and a lot of that is still under the umbrella of Planned Parenthood, depending on what kind of insurance you got. And so we already see this where people go to a Planned Parenthood clinic or whatever, and they want to ridicule and vilify and throw rocks at everybody going in there. And some people are just literally going in there to get prenatal care. They're not all about evacuation. Some of it is like, this is the only place I can go to get vitamins, but when you tell the story, and I'm glad that you made the point earlier, Sharon, about not using the word abortion, when you make that the central thing, and this becomes an abortion clinic and not just a clinic for wellness of women, regardless of how it started, 50, 60 years ago, we get that history. But in today's society, this is where a lot of people go for medical help for a lot of different reasons. And if you set fire to everybody that goes in there, you're murdering innocent people to save innocent ideas. Yeah. So that to me so many people are literally willing to die. They're not willing to die on that hill. They're willing to kill on that hill. And that's what gets me. You know, they're not willing to die for anything, but they will murder you for it. You know, for thinking differently, for looking differently, for worshiping differently, for not wanting to say Merry Christmas. You need to die. And that's always been that faction's MO. It hasn't always been the conservatives, hasn't always been the Republican Party, but right now those two other entities have been overtaken by this faction that believes murder is a solution to all their problems. And except for unborn babies, which they can murder grown people for. But then, you know, matter of fact, Chuck, I thank you for this one. This is an oldie but good because I've seen this before. But you know, once you're born, they don't have shit to do with you. Absolutely. They want to protect this unborn innocent life. But the minute you're out, now you're on your own, get a job, you moocher. I hope your tramp mother doesn't want food stamps to feed you, you know, don't get medical insurance, you know. So all of the well woman care, all of the postpartum care, as you mentioned earlier, Chuck, free public education. What they want to do is breed slaves, because we all know that a lack of education, a lack of opportunities, a lack of stable home environment leads to higher crime rates, which leads to going to jail, which leads to being subject to the 13th Amendment, which says we can now enslave you. Absolutely. This is how you enslave a population. And it won't all be Black people, it'll be disproportionately us, because it usually is, but a lot of poor, broke white folks are going to be in there too. The ones that can't afford to send their child off to Paris for the summer.
But right? The ones who are still voting for Republicans down here in the South, broke as hell, but still voting GOP. Makes no sense to me.
Joy, you said a mouthful with breeding slaves, right? Because sometimes we forget what cattle we were, right? And let's make the correlation to the fact that people can't fill jobs. People are having a hard time keeping their establishment open, and God forbid they say let the immigrants in. So they want to breed their workforce.
And you don't have to go overseas if you can build a sweatshop and a jail in Mississippi.
Wow. Jesus.
Sickening. You know, I got one more video I'm gonna show you, and this is from. I spend way too much time, since y'all know I'm still recovering from my surgery, so I can't leave the house much, and so I spend way too much time on TikTok. This is the last video, I promise, but this one is the liberal redneck.
People will die as a direct result of this decision. Okay, I think we all know that anyone who wants an abortion badly enough is still going to get one. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not you have the means to do so safely. Rich people, hell, they can get on a plane, fly to a sane state or some other country in the mountains, get an appointment with Dr. Von some shit, make a weekend out of it, you know. But if you're poor, it's going to be a much dicier proposition. They've long sought to make it illegal to be poor in this country, and this is a major victory for them in that regard, even if the decision, much like the party itself, is nowhere near as popular as they would like you to believe. The majority of Americans don't support this, and I'm willing to bet you that a lot of the ones who say they do would be singing a different tune under the right circumstances. I say that because I went to college in a very Christian, very conservative part of Tennessee in the mid-2000s. All right, and buddy, the only thing our right age was moving more of than Four Loko was Plan B, okay? Because just like some people say about atheists and foxholes, it ain't no 20-year-old anti-choice when the sun shines on a college party, all right? I don't give a fuck what church you go to.
Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck. I love him. He is always on point.
That was
Dr. Von some shit.
But I love right? Dr. Von some shit.
That was funny. But he wasn't lying.
He put some serious visuals in my head.
He wasn't lying.
That's actually his name on Facebook, the liberal redneck. But I think he's Trey Crowder on TikTok and everywhere else. But yeah, he's another great example of this burgeoning and growing. Like he said, he went to college in the 2000s, you know, 15 years after any of us, 15, 20 years after any of us did. And there is that growing mass. I don't know if it's reached critical mass yet. This growing mass of middle-class white people who are like, no, this is bullshit. And they are waking up to their own reality, not even the reality we're trying to get them to see for us, but for themselves, and no longer choosing to vote against their own self-interest just to keep us down. They're like, no, this is bullshit. We need more of them. But we need them to not be disaffected, because we almost had them with the Bernie brothers, but they just chose, violent silence, right? With this whole I'm going to abstain bullshit. I think they've learned their lesson. I hope it doesn't cost us all our lives for them to have learned that lesson. But people like him and the people that follow him, and there's a whole lot more. There's another guy that I follow, something warrior. I forget his name, but he's on TikTok as well. He was a former conservative that has written papers about conservative positions, and he is now deconstructing the lies he used to believe one by one. And he's got like 200-some-thousand followers. And so they're out there and they're helping, they're being allies. We just need the people that listen to them not to just like the video, but to then go out and vote. Early voting is already available here in the state of Georgia. If you live in Georgia, get your ass out there. I can't even drive right now, but I bet you I'll catch an Uber tomorrow and take my ass out there to early vote, so get it done. If I can haul my abdominal scarred ass out there to vote, you can too. So I ain't trying to hear it. It feels slow and it feels hopeless and it feels like your vote doesn't count, but it does. And the only reason they keep changing all of the voting rules is because it counts so much. But if you get to where you believe that it doesn't, then they have won. That's what they want you to believe, is that it doesn't matter what you do. We're going to do what we want. No, they can't if you vote them out of office. But if you just say, well, my vote doesn't matter, and these people win by 2,837 votes, 37 people who fucked around and didn't vote, so do better. Everybody do better. And I'm not trying to hear about black women. We've been doing our motherfucking job this whole time. The rest of y'all, get your ass on out there and vote.
Amen.
This is the most wine I've had in like 6 weeks. And it was watered down at that, but I'm still hot now. Like I'm sweating. So I believe that is everything that I had for the night. I just want to remind everybody, you have primaries coming up, you have voting coming up. Please, I know our followers are politically involved. How could you not be if you watch this show? Yeah. But y'all got friends that still go, what? When you talk to them. So make sure you get them. Make sure that you make your voice be heard. It's more than marching. Political action is voting. That is the political action. And so, any last words from any of y'all?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, in that case, on this May 6th at 1 hour and 33 minutes in, I would like to say I am Joy Stevens.
I am Sharon Letman Hicks.
I'm Chuck Hobbs, and a shout out to Tom. See you next week when you get back, brother.
Right. And this has been Steel Sharpens Steel.
Yeah, you know what time it is. Crack open that bottle of wine. Grab your favorite glass, pour a couple of fingers of scotch in it. Get that stick, light it, and blow.